we've spotted a bear down here in the woods. Obviously, I'm not going to get too close. Try that again. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Red Tool House. As you can see, we're on the road again, and you may be wondering, for homesteaders, you guys sure leave the homestead a lot. Well, we're actually going down to Sevier County, Tennessee, which is near Gatlinburg, and we're going down to obviously enjoy that area, but we're going to look at some of the original homestead buildings in this area from when the settlers came over and settled Sevier County and in the Gatlinburg area. Some of those cabins, some of those old buildings, grist mills are still intact. So we want to check those out and kind of see those setups and how some of those old cabins were built, and want to share that with you guys. It's really neat to see some of this old construction that's well over 100 years old, 100 years plus, and the history associated with that. So come with us, we'll check it out. Well, you can't go to Gatlinburg without hitting some of the tourist attractions. The boys always love going to the aquarium, and that becomes a regular tradition for us. So we always have to take the time, go into the aquarium, really look at some of the neat stuff they have in there. You know, they've got some great exhibits of different fish, different sea life, and interactive elements as well. The boys like to go down and handle the crabs and do those type of things. But probably the highlight, of course, is the thing you see on TV all the time, or you see in the commercials, the conveyor system that moves you through the underbelly of the main aquarium. So the fish and the sharks and all those things are swimming overhead as you stand in this conveyance system that moves you through underneath the aquarium. So it's really cool. We had a great time there. They've got a new penguin exhibit that the boys really enjoy. They like seeing the penguins swim around and interacting with those. But after hitting all the tourist traps, we decided it's time to get into the mountains, really enjoy some of the beautiful rugged scenery down there, and of course go find some of these historic buildings. As you go into the Smoky Mountains National Forest, there are just some beautiful streams, just gorgeous areas. I've hiked several of these trails and really spent some time in this area of the mountains. And it's just some really rugged landscape, really neat to look at. Beautiful streams, huge rocks, waterfalls, very neat. And even though that area attracts a lot of people, there was a lot of humanity around there, it still is an opportunity to get into the woods and really enjoy that. So we spent some time there, just showed the boys, again, what it was like in this area of the Smoky Mountains. And then we moved on toward our main goal of finding these historic homesteads that are up in the National Forest. All right, so this is the Ogle Farmhouse according to the trail marker, but this was built in 1883 and was a working farm from 1883 to 1925. But it's interesting to look at the wood shingles and the center fireplace. The fireplace built in the center of the house, of course, you get all that thermal mass there to heat up the house and keep it warm. And that's all just stacked stone fireplace, but the wood shingles are pretty impressive. Again, I'm sure those have been replaced over the past 150 years, but kind of a neat structure. We'll go check it out. So you can see by the way this cabin was built, obviously it was a hand-hewn log cabin, and so you have the flat surface of the outside of the logs. Obviously there would have been chinking in between. A lot of the chinkings come out. Been a lot of graffiti as well, since this is in a national park. But it's interesting to look at the size of some of these logs. I mean, these things are monsters. So you think about what it would have taken to lay all this up by hand, utilizing maybe a team of horses and just sheer manual labor. But of course, the artistry that goes into making the cuts for the corners, the angles, the mortises, the tenons, all the things involved in that, and the different crafts there just to get all that to link together so it doesn't fall apart on you. Not sure how good this is going to turn out, but you can see obviously inside of the cabin, very modest. This cabin's actually a pretty good sized cabin for what would have been built back in that time. But all the creek stone. It's a dual fireplace. There's a fireplace here, and then on the other side there's a room just like this one that has a fireplace as well. It's interesting. There's the pass-through is open, so there's no There's no direct hallway that connects the two of them. And you can see exposed rafters. These are hand hewn. These look like locust logs that are hand hewn for the second floor. Pretty certain for safety reasons they don't allow you to have access to the second floor. But you can imagine that loft could have been for the kids. It could have been for a lot of other storage. Could have even been hay storage if that was necessary this time of year. It would help with insulation dramatically. But it's just really neat. Wooden floors. Some cabins, of course, had dirt floors. But I really like the details of the construction. If you're on your homestead and you're going to build a cabin, look at either hand hewn or stacking logs. You can see inside here where the chinking's gone, they've put up small strips of wood. Again, not sure how period correct that is, but that would help as well to keep things down. So if you look at the details of this build of this house, you can see it was an addition added on. So again, which side was first? Probably this side was first and added on. But utilizing locust posts were key. We've talked about that in some previous episodes where locust posts, of course, they wouldn't dry out, or they wouldn't rot out very often. If they could be stuck in the ground, they could be stuck directly on the ground, and they would stay solid for a very long time. So you can see some of this portion of the house, I'm sure erosion's caused a lot of this fill in, that the original owners most likely would have put this up on stone and used these posts to block up. To keep that off the ground, you could use the locust logs to keep the house off the ground. But one thing to look at too, if you're going to go old school and do wood shingles on a house, then when it comes to do your roof peak, you don't have the ability to like shingles do, to curve a roof peak over or to put a ridge cap or anything on. So what you have to do is extend your shingles, and you usually want to extend those so that if the storms and rain come out of a certain direction, then of course the extension of those shingles, of course, keep that from being blocked. So most likely the storms would come this way, and that would help keep the rain from coming into the ridge cap. But with wooden shingles, you're still going to have some leakage there. All right, so here's the barn on the same property. Now obviously you'd think, my goodness, who would have a barn with all these rocks around? But it's pretty apparent that erosion, there's a small stream right behind the camera, erosion and some things have really washed a lot of the topsoil away. So you can imagine 100+ years ago, this probably had some pretty good pasture in here as the land was cleared. But it's pretty neat. Again, hand-hewn cabin, or hand-hewn logs with the same construction as the house, wooden shingles, nice lofts there for hay and other storage. And this has looks like 6 different corral area, or 6 different stalls that would hold animals, and of course the doors, handmade troughs. You can see the old rafters, just using poles as rafters. Looks like they're on 24-inch centers, some cross bracing, and then of course coming back with the purlins, the small strips of wood to nail the shingles into. And as we've even seen on my brother's place where he's building a period correct cabin, you use the purlins there, put your shingles in, and it all comes together really well. So as many of you are aware, last year the Great Smoky Mountains had a very bad fire in Gatlinburg area, and you can see the signs of the wildfire that came through. Burned all the way down to where I'm standing, but fortunately didn't get the barn. So the barn and the original cabin are still here, and you can see all the fire damage around. But it's also interesting to see with wildfire what comes back. And you can see here some of the underbrush is coming back in. But even right here, this is my favorite, the pioneering locust. So here's a locust tree growing already where it had been burned out just last year. So, with everything comes rebirth here. So the fire, as it whips through, it makes things look charred and a little funky at times. But it gives the opportunity for some new understory to come in, some of these new pioneering plants like the locust. But it was a good thing that the barn was saved. Again, the fire came within 10, 15 feet of it here. So I don't know if they had a fire crew here trying to keep it, or just the fact that they had a lot of this underbrush cleared out around here saved it. All right, now this is what I think of when I think of a mountain homestead. You can see here we've got the original cabin, the homestead cabin here. Again, hand-hewed logs, stone foundation, wooden shingles, stone fireplace. And of course you have your animal areas. So this could have been corn crib, it could have been hog area, small animals, and then a larger barn back there, much like what we saw in the previous cabin. But I really like the fenced element here. And you think this would be an area that would be grazed by your ruminants that you'd have. And of course you got the forest all around you and a really nice mountain stream to the side. So this to me is picturesque mountain homestead. So we'll check out the cabin here and see what we see inside. All right, I have a little more light coming in on this one so we can see inside a little better. And this problem with wearing a hat when you walk into something low, you knock your head off. But again, you can see these hand-hewn logs. These are definitely locusts. I can tell by looking at them, looking at the grain on them. So that would have been, while these may have been replaced, because some of them look a little bit newer than they should be. Definitely the log of choice if you have access to that. Again, stone fireplace, real simple layout. Just a simple, basically simple everything. You can see again, all the chinking's gone on these, but some of the chinking would have been mud, kind of a daub with mud and straw. Other chinking is moss, and I've seen even with wool where people just take sheep's wool and stuff it in. So basically chinking was anything that you can find to stick in the cracks there to keep the wind from coming in. Well, this is always something that impresses me in the Appalachian area, where you just imagine what it took to clear this land. Obviously this was all forested. So when these settlers came in and wanted to claim this land and take it, they had to clear it all. And of course, if you're going to plow, make tillable acres, you have to get rid of the stone. So you do your perimeter fence around, take that stone, move it by hand or move it by team in a wagon to get it clear out of there. Now this area is a trailhead, so there's a lot of foot traffic that comes through here. So that's why there's been a lot of erosion. You can imagine just hundreds of people a day, maybe more, coming through here and wearing this down. But imagine when this was an actual homestead farm where you didn't have this much traffic, this much erosion going on, then these stones would have still been here maybe. But just imagine what it would take to move some of this, and the stumps. Again, you can see the hardwood forest behind me here. Just a ton of effort it would have taken to take these trees down, to cut them, to mill them, to hand hew them, whatever you're going to do, but then also to get those stumps out. And if you read in some of the original homesteading elements, some of the history of homesteading, some of these guys would come through when they would take a tract of land they knew they were going to settle it. Before they'd really come in and start settling, they'd even come through and they'd wring the bark on the trees to kill it. And that would allow the tree to die and the canopy to open up, and then they even come in and plant some seed, plant some annuals to grow up, some vegetables and things. So as they come back around, a lot of the long hunters and those types would do that, so they'd have an opportunity to come back around to a spot and say, hey, I've put some food in here, so it'll grow and actually provide sustenance as they get their supplies together to settle. But here we are at the barn. So this is interesting. This obviously isn't a hand hewn, this is just a log barn structure. So you can imagine, of course, the bottom log is always going to get the rot, and that would be what would have to be replaced the most. But this one even still has some notching done, and then of course some lap siding there in the wooden shingles. Pretty cool. So you actually see the old stone wall going through the woods here. So the National Park Service obviously hasn't kept the original homestead farm open the same size that it was originally, but you can see all the effort it would have taken to stack these stones, and that just keeps on going over the point there. So a really neat piece of land, really interesting to think about trying to settle something like this. See how far these stones go. Yeah, so it just kind of tapers off right there. So this is one of the coolest buildings on the Homestead Trail here, and this is the mill. So this would have been, all the farms that would have been around here, this would have been one of the spots where you'd bring your grains, obviously. After they dried out and you wanted to crush them into flour, you'd bring them to the miller, and the miller would take care of that. And you can see this is water powered. Got a water wheel here. Got a water wheel underneath the mill, but the sluiceway, of course, channels all the water down. So they've got a high spot on the creek where the water's captured and moves down through the trough, comes down at an angle, 45-degree angle, and turns the water wheel. So this is different from what you would normally expect, what you'd see on Little House on the Prairie, where the water wheel's turning like a Ferris wheel. This one is made to turn horizontally like a turntable on a record player. So as the water comes down at a 45-degree angle, it hits that and turns it. So as it's turning that wheel, it obviously turns a shaft that comes up vertically through the bottom of this building, and that shaft then would turn the stone. And that stone would have another stone, something else to grind against it and crush all of that dried grain to make the flour. And there's a little trough where that would slide down into and collect, and the miller would bag that up and obviously charge you a fee to do that work, or of course trade you for grain. So this is pretty neat. Not a huge building. I like the lap siding. Again, wooden shingles. Lap siding is pretty cool. It definitely lasts longer than some of the other options there, more weatherproof. But pretty cool setup. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that tour of those original homesteads there in Tennessee. We really had a good time, really enjoyed that trip. I apologize for the informality of the closing here, but it's getting late. It's been a rough week, a lot going on, and I'm just kind of falling behind on my schedule here. So you'll have to excuse the fact that you're looking at my feet. But we want to thank you guys for watching. Again, appreciate everyone, the great comments we've been getting. I really like the conversation we've got going on the videos about homesteading versus prepping, some of the videos we've been doing this week. And we're going to continue that series, so I appreciate all the good comments. I also wanted to announce our giveaway for the month of September. We're going to give away another Red Tool House hat. Now, if you're new to the channel, what happens is if you go to our website, redtoolhouse.com, down at the bottom you see a button to sign up for our e-newsletter. Then we just take a random drawing from there, and if your name's drawn, then we send you a prize each month. And again, this month of September, we're going to give away another hat. That seemed to go pretty well. So we appreciate everybody watching. And again, as we say, whether you homestead a high-rise of apartment or 1,000 acres in the middle of nowhere, it's all about getting at it. So just go out and get your hands dirty. Take care.